CATCH-A-MELLA. The air is so breezy and clean smelling. The leaves are gone from the trees. They lay on the ground, swirling like little tornadoes with each passing breeze. And the sprinkle of winter here and there fills the air. The town of Kinston is a very small town. It's very still. When I was a little girl, I lived in a small town. Sometimes I played in my backyard with the red robins flying around me, chirping away. In the meantime, I would pretend to make mud cakes. I would bake them in the sun, then turn those mud cakes out of that little pan, making another batch of wet mud, pretending, of course, that this was chocolate icing, and I spread it all over that dried mud cake. I baked a lot, but the air was changing, and I knew that the whispers of the breezy days during November and the arrival of winter were soon here. There was a small stream which flowed next to our house, while I used to sit in my bedroom window and watch the sun peeping through the trees. And I saw the glimmers of bright gold winter dancing together. It was so breathtaking. The stream lay about 60 feet away from our backyard, while the trees were beautiful this time of the year. They were bare, but beautiful. Daylight savings time had changed back to standard time. As my grandmother used to say, "Girl, the frost had hit the collards and the sweet potatoes were sweet enough to eat." And the old man winter indeed had arrived. The wooded area surrounding the house crinkled in the winter, and the tiny little lizards scurried through the remaining leaves. You could hear them. The lizards' colors were bright orange, and greens, and yellows. But I knew they were harmless. The trees, acorns, and pine cones would fall on the hard ground. And I would gather the little acorns up and keep them for the holidays. No doubt about it, the outdoors was always beautiful. Even when it rained, I could hear the rain tick, tick, tick on my windows. It would almost make me sleep every time. But on the inside of our home, and during the past several weeks and days, my mama was so sad and afraid. Daddy had died. He died of cancer. In those days, no one ever heard very much about cancer. But Daddy had been in the army, and we thought he had caught it from the army. He used to tell me stories about how his sergeant said, "Attention!" Boy, those were some good days. There were many strange things happening during the time when we buried Daddy. Now, for example, there was a strange smell always present in our house. We felt love from Daddy, but we also knew that he was gone. It was customary to bring your loved ones home for viewing, while the morticians would set up everything just like they normally did in a funeral home. That was a very frightening time for me. To tell you the truth, I did not understand death, so I stayed with my granny until our house returned to normal. It was only a day, but it felt like forever. Now, it was just Mama and me. To say the least, it was not easy. At times we could still smell Daddy's aftershave, and his old shoes were exactly where he left them. I could smell them. To pass the days, Mom and I took short walks together. Sometimes Mama even allowed me to walk to the nearby store and to school alone since Daddy was gone. I guess I was growing up. I lived in a small town in North Carolina called Kinston. Kinston had one main street, Atkins Street. It was a street where Mr. Jones, a police officer, patrolled the traffic. He wore a blue policeman uniform. His brass on his uniform shined like the gold, and you could see his white gloves several blocks away. He would work like a precision clock, ticking away. His arms signaled go with a motion that made you stop and stare. When he stopped all traffic so that we could walk across the street, his white gloves would raise so high and neatly that it made you smile. Then we would strut across Atkins Street knowing that Mr. Jones was looking out for us. It was a treat to watch that man work. We lived on Melvin Street. It was very close to the store and to my school. In fact, everything was very close. Kinston was a very small southern town. Why, in Kinston, we rarely met new people. Not that new people were not welcomed, but the town of Kinston was a long ways out of the way from the main big cities like Raleigh and Wilmington. Kinstonians would sit on their front porches and wave at cars passing by. You could see everybody's hand waving and waving. While Daddy was alive, he and Mama would sit on our front porch on Sundays and listen to the baseball games between the Dodgers and the Yankees. Why, we could hear who was on third, how many outs. Oh boy, I used to be sitting on those front steps of ours, my mom and my daddy laughing. Then my daddy would get mad, and then my mama would get happy. It was a southern thing to do on Sunday. And after Daddy's death, everything moved so fast in our lives. But somehow, we got through the sadness. But it didn't slow down the calendar. Christmas was coming. As was the tradition in Kinston Schools District, quite a few of my friends were not even in school because of the Christmas break. They were too busy with their families buying Christmas gifts and stuff. I still remember that some of them laughed at Mama and me because we were poor. But let me tell you that our being poor did not start until my daddy passed away. I knew that we would not be poor forever. I thought that someday it would be just like it was when Daddy was alive. There were times at night I lay in my bed, I had all kinds of toys under my covers, my dolls, my books, my puzzles, and my spoons. Say what? You don't know about spoons? You don't know what you're missing. And I thought about how things were when Daddy was here with my mom and me, and I would cry. Finally, as the days and nights passed, my tears turned into welcome sleep. It's a secret that I've kept until this day. Mama tried making everything as normal as possible. Every morning, Mama would call, "Lena, it's time for school." "Okay," I'd say. Mama always cooked a hot breakfast. When I was smaller, Mama would cook hot cakes with fresh country sausage and place me on the sofa to watch Captain Kangaroo's show as I ate. The captain had a large grandfather clock that talked. with wide eyes and a large smile, while the clock would teach kids how to tell time. And after I ate breakfast, I would dress for school. Things were great then. I walked to school each day. When Daddy was alive, he would walk with me. Daddy worked at Parents Hospital. The hospital was near my school. My daddy was very protective. I'm used to walking alone now. One of the fondest memories during those days was of a little bag lady that I met while going to the store. Everyone around me was shopping for Christmas gifts because Christmas was only a few days away. One day, my best friend Christine, who is 10 years old like me, told me that Mrs. Y needs help with a project. She said that Mrs. Y was going to pay each of us if we could help her after school. Now, Mrs. Y is our art teacher. I thought this would be a great way to make a little money to buy Mama a Christmas gift. So I was to meet Christina after school in Mrs. Y's classroom. I was the first to arrive. Mrs. Y wasn't there, but the lights were on. So I placed my books on top of the desk and I sat down and waited for everyone else. And I thought to myself, Mrs. Y will be right back, especially since she needs our help. So Christine had told me earlier. And sitting there, I remember that I had one errand to run after school. But I wanted to take the extra money that Mrs. Y was going to pay me to buy Mama a Christmas gift. I needed to make sure that I took care of Daddy's present for Mama, just as if he was still around. I waited and waited. It was 3:30 p.m. and no one had arrived. I went to the classroom door to open it to look for Mrs. Y, but to my horror, the door was locked. The door must have locked when I entered the room. I shook the doorknob, thinking that I could perhaps loosen the lock and the door would come open, but I had no luck. I was so scared. How can I get out of this classroom? My heart is beating as fast as a train. I could hear my own heart. Then all of a sudden I heard a loud click. The lights went out. Someone was turning out all of the lights in the classrooms. I heard the lights being turned off, click after click. First a click, then a door was slammed. Classroom after classroom. As if some machine was in control and this machine was heading right for me. Now everything was still and dark. Oh, the silence was so frightening. I placed my hands over my eyes and screamed, "Help! Help! Someone please help me!" But no one heard me. I whispered, "Daddy, why can't you be here?" No one heard me. I tried again, calling for help and knocking on the door. Still no one came. I looked at the clock in the room, but now it was 4:30. I was locked inside school in Mrs. Y's room alone with Christmas only a few hours away, with no hope of anyone to rescue me. I started to cry, just cry, shoestring tears. I must have sat there for another 10 or 15 minutes before I heard a key turn in the door. I looked up and said, ever so afraid and softly, "Mrs. Y?" But the voice answered, "Mr. Hunt. Child, what are you doing in here at this time of day?" I explained what my friend had done, telling telling Mr. Hunt that my best friend Christine told me that Mrs. Wire, our art teacher, needed help with a project after school. And because my daddy had just died, I wanted to buy a gift for my mommy because my daddy isn't here and I needed the money and I got locked in, and that's how it happened. He nodded and said, "Don't be afraid." He took another look at me and asked, "Aren't you Lena Wade?" I answered yes. Then Mr. Hunt said, "I remembers your daddy. I would take you out to the front of the school." He took my hand and talked very softly. "Lena," he said, "when someone tells you that your teacher will need help after school, always check with the teacher before you believes anyone else. Okay?" "Okay," I answered. "Now, run along before it gets dark." "Thank you, Mr. Hunt, for rescuing me. I've learned my lesson on who to trust." "You're welcome, Lena." Calming down, I remembered that I had to stop at the store to buy 1 stick of butter, a loaf of bread, and a pound of sugar before going home. Mama was going to make lots of CATCH-A-MELLA for Christmas. CATCH-A-MELLA means the best of everything. Now in this instance, Mama was going to bake cookies, cakes, homemade candy. When she finished with each mixing bowl, I would take my finger and scoop all of the batter that was left all over with my fingers. CATCH-A-MELLA. Mama said the word CATCH-A-MELLA was passed down by my great-great-grandmother, who passed it to my great-grandmother, who passed it to my grandmother, who passed it to my mother, who passed it to me. Good food and good times are CATCH-A-MELLA. Continuing on my journey to the store, I saw someone different on Atkins Street. I was just curious about her at first. Remember, we don't get many visitors to our little town. It was a little lady carrying a bag. She wore strange clothes that let me know that she was not from around here, or so I thought. She also wore a shawl wrapped around her shoulders to keep her warm, and she kind of hunched over with her shoulders kind of bent forward. She was a strange one. Christmas lights hanging in the store windows seemed to catch her attention. Christmas puppets were in the windows and beautiful lights decorated the streets. Everyone for blocks around were preparing for Christmas holidays. You could hear the Christmas carolers from one end of Atkins Street to the other. Anyone could see that CATCH-A-MELLA, and the holidays were in the air. Atkins Street was the main street in our little town, but I always walked to the store in the direction of Madison Street, which was a little off from Atkins Street. Now this route allowed me to pass the bakery where fresh cookies, breads, and cakes were baked every single day. You could smell the aroma of a mile away. Do they smell good? I stopped in the bakery to say hello to Mr. Lucas, who owned the bakery. Now, he was never one for a lot of words, but you could tell he enjoyed his own cooking all right because of his big stomach. It shook like a bowl of jelly when he walked. He had a long mustache and he always said, "How's your mama, Lena?" I answered, "She's doing fine, Mr. Lucas." He used to curl the tips of his mustache as you talked. Then he would say, "Hurry along now, before it gets too late." I felt that he said that so that I would not ask for any of those delicious cakes and hot bread and cookies. Oh well. I went on walking again, going about my way, empty-handed, of course. No free cookies, of course. No cakes, no hot bread, of course. Nope, not even a tiny piece of anything, nothing. Not even a mouse crumb. Outside on Main Street, the sound of pitter-patter was everywhere. People running this way and that, scurrying about like bumblebees in a beehive. That's how my daddy used to say it. Horns were honking, and the street lights blinking yellow and green and red. But back on Atkins Street again, the loaf of bread, stick of butter, and 1 pound of sugar popped into my memory. Over and over again. Bread, sugar, butter, bread, sugar, butter. I was doing a little jig singing this as I went along. Can't forget bread, sugar, butter, jigging and singing, jigging and singing, jigging and singing. All of my fears that I felt in school had gone. CATCH-A-MELLA. As I walked, something soft and wet began to fall on my face. Snow. I love snow. As I turned the corner onto Atkins Street, that little lady caught my eye again. She was still there. She moved very slowly and carefully. She was definitely different. I could hear her skirt swish, 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 as she walked. I tried very hard not to stare or follow. God knows I had already had too much of an adventure back in Mrs. Wire's classroom. I could not help myself. I had never heard her skirt swish like that. One lesson should have been enough at least for one day. But oh my goodness. She was apparently looking for something. She was peeping in and out of places here and there, as if looking for goodies or something special. But why? Where is she going? What did she see, and where on earth did she come from? How did she even get here in the first place in our little old town? I got closer and closer to her. The snow was falling faster and faster, but I got my nerve up to say something to her. But before I could get a word out, I tripped right over my shoestrings and fell right down on the ground. I laughed and I got up so quickly. Thank goodness she did not see me. I saw her reach down in an old trash basket and peep inside. She pulled out something from that basket. It was a box. She held it tightly. Again, I was so curious. Daddy always said I was too curious for words. It was held so tightly in her hand, and I could see the bright colors of red, yellow, and blue. It had small black horses with horns on their head, and carriages, and the miniature chairs were perfectly carved. Lights were blinking on and off, and it turned around and around. My goodness. Hurry up so that I can see, I thought to myself. Time was passing so quickly. Why can't she hurry up? I got to get home. What will she do next? I decided I'd better get to the store before it closed, so I did. I dashed through the store so quickly. Butter, bread, sugar, and I was finishing. Out the door I ran outside, going back towards home. But God, there she was, still holding something in her hand. The little lady turned around. It was beautiful, beautiful carousel. And it played a lovely tune. Right then and there, I wished wish for something just like that for my mommy. Just a nice gift like that for my mommy for Christmas. I looked up at the sky and the snow fell gently on my face. I was caught in a trance with my wish, and before I could move or speak, the little lady who carried a bag turned and stared right at me. Her eyes twinkling like the North Star, bright and large. For a very short second, the melody stopped. We faced each other, our eyes locked, and without speaking, I heard the words. I know that wishes can come true. Look hard and you will see many, many beautiful things. Just open your heart and sing. Live again. Live again. And you will see and enjoy, no matter who you are. When you lose someone you love, never, never lose hope. For good things will come in a twinkling of a star. The little lady who carried a bag found a beautiful carousel inside a magnificent box. As I looked up again, I caught the little lady peeking once more, her eyes twinkling ever so bright. The little lady touched her nose and wiggled her toes and softly said, "We all dream, we all wish, joy and laughter. 'Tis the time for bright lights of ribbons and bows, and good old twinkles in our toes. No more tears, for the one you lost is always with you. Have a joyous Christmas filled with CATCH-A-MELLA." I started to say, "What's your name?" But it was too late. The little lady's last words rang loud and clear. "Lena, don't forget the gift for your mama." Then with another touch to her nose, the little lady who carried a bag vanished. The box she held fell to the snow. I picked it up and looked around everywhere. The little lady was gone. I will never forget the little lady who carried a bag. All the way home, I could not believe that I had something for my mama. She will be so surprised and she will be so happy. I will never be able to explain the appearance of the little lady who carried the bag. When I arrived home, I hid the box in my room. Later, Mommy and I decorated the Christmas tree and pushed the angel out of the box and picked it up and put it right smack dab on the top of the tree. After decorating the tree, I went back to my room and took out that little box. I carried it to the family room and placed it under the tree. I returned to my room and I could swear I smelled the sweet, sweet cakes that Mommy made during the night. Then I awaited Christmas morning. When I awoke, I had been right. I had smelled those beautiful cakes that Mommy made. The smell of Christmas cakes and cookies had filled our home. As I started downstairs, I got Mama out of bed and we hurried into the room. "It's CATCH-A-MELLA! It's CATCH-A-MELLA time, Mama." The fireplace was lit, the room was nice and warm, just like Daddy used to have it on Christmas morning. I gave Mama her gift. She was so delighted. To my surprise, there was a gift in a card wrapped for me. And on the card it read, "To my little girl Lena, CATCH-A-MELLA. Love, Daddy."